So we want to welcome everyone to this April Coaches Cafe. We've got some really good things in store today with our dialogue, and let's just get started right off the bat. Let me ask Gail Davis, you're on with us. Can you unmute Dale and lead us in a word of prayer to get us started?
Sure, be happy to. Lord Jesus, I thank you for this group that's assembled here, and Lord, we're just growing and learning all we can so that we can help activate others' gifts. And I pray that especially as we talk today, that there'll be new insights that'll be shared and we'll really be encouraged and helped along in this journey. Be with Larry, Lord, give him the words that he needs to say. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Ken DeMar is our support team leader based in Calgary. And Ken, you have shared recently with us some really exciting experiences that you had with a larger group, a larger team that you were working with and doing some team building and some exercises. Why don't you share with us a little bit more detail about that?
Sure, would love to. First of all, let me say that, I've worked with GRIP-Birkman now for 7 years, 8 years. Began the process just loving the aha moments that I had with individuals. So even yesterday, we have a new office manager in our office, and actually turned out to be 3 hours with her going over her GRIP-Birkman profile and just watching the lights go off in terms of how she understood herself. And she's saying things like, I wish I would have known this years ago. I wish I would have had a chance to understand the roots of why I act a certain way. A long time ago would have helped me understand myself. And she talked about, I've never recognized that as a stress response. And so it was just a great time. And I love those kind of things. But as time goes on, I work primarily as an assistant district superintendent. I work primarily with groups of people. So I end up working with elder boards. I work with staff teams. I work with whatever. And I've come to value the team debriefs as being significant in terms of how teams function. And in fact, it's almost come to a place where the individual conversations I have with people really are just a great lead up to what's really important, and that is the team conversation. So I was talking to a church. I'm working with a church in northern part of our country. It's a small church. For that area of the country, it would be large, about 200 people. And the pastor and the associate pastor had gone through GRIP-Birkman, and they said, we would just love to do this with our team, but I don't know if we can afford it. So we had this conversation and finally I said, well, what about just doing a debrief of leadership GRIP? And they said, huh. And I thought to myself, shoot, I've never done that before. But so anyway, they ended up signing up 23 people who all took the leadership GRIP. Every person in their church who has a leadership position volunteers the works, and had them all write the leadership GRIP. And and so I got them together. This would be about 4 weeks ago now. And we spent about 3 hours having a conversation about leadership GRIP. And probably just an incredible experience. What I did is I printed out all 15 of the gifts. I started out the whole process by having them look at scriptures that talk about spiritual gifts. Why Ephesians 4, 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14. That the gifts are given not for our good, but for the building of the body of Christ. And so I said, do we really understand that? Are we all in agreement that that's why we are given spiritual gifts? It's never for our own benefit, but it's for the benefit of the body overall. So we talked about that for a while. So a short Bible study. Then I laid out 15 of the gifts in a big circle, and I had people go stand by your primary spiritual gift. So they did that all around the circle, 23 people. Then I went to each one of the gifts individually and said, what do you think? What do you think? What does this say about your gift? So this is your spiritual gift. Look at your leadership GRIP. What does it say that this gift is? And so they would read it over, and I would say, do you agree with that? And sometimes people would say, oh, yeah, maybe. So then I turned to the group and I said, do you see this gift in them? And by about the third person, the whole group would respond almost every time, "We affirm that gift in you." And so we went around the circle, and often people were in tears, just saying, I've known that gift is in me, but I've never had it affirmed. I've never had my church tell me, we see this gift in you and we celebrate it." And then, so we went around the whole circle, and then I went back and I said, so what's the shadow side of this gift? I wasn't sure was happy with the more negative side. So I said, what's the shadow side of this gift? And so then we looked at the other side of that gift line, and said, how do you feel about that? Is it true? And how do you do that? Then I said to the group, do you see the shadow side? So we went around the whole thing. And then once we got done, that took a long time, but it was just very, very fruitful. And then I said, go to your secondary gift. And so we went to the secondary gift. And then I said to them very quickly, tell me what the second gift is. And then I said, talk to me about how this gift and that gift work together. How do they complement each other or work together? And how does that work in the way that you find yourself serving in the life of the church and serving the kingdom, not just in the life of the church, serving the kingdom? And again, went to the group and said, do you see this? Is this valuable? And that just, and again, great affirmation. It was the funnest time. And kind of little anecdote here. One of the guys, one of the men there, his primary gift was help. His secondary gift is service. And then I just asked him, what's his third gift? And it was like mercy. And so just in the conversation, I said, is there a shadow side to these three gifts? And his wife across the room yells, he can't say no. And so the group kind of laughed about this. And then we spent some time talking about how do we help this guy exercise his gifts, but not kill himself because he feels like he's got to do everything because of the mixture of his gifts. So that was good. Then I printed out the 4 team styles and had everybody stand at their primary team style. And we talked about that. And then I had them divide into groups. So I want your staff team, get in your leadership styles. Then the elders board, get in your leadership, the team style, sorry. And then had every group or committee that was represented there get in their team styles. And we just dialogued. What does this mean? Are there any holes here? Is there something that we need to be aware of as this team functions? So it was a great time. Did the same thing then with the bodybuilding roles. Printed out the bodybuilding roles on 11 by 8.5 by 14 pieces of paper in the largest possible type, laminate them, put them on the floor. Same thing. They got in team styles. We did it with the whole group. We did it with staff. We did it with elders. We did it with each individual team, and then dialogued. So what happens when we don't have an equipping releaser in this team? What happens when we don't have this? Or what happens when we're overburdened with, of actor listeners? We got a team with 3 active listeners. Well, that's great, but they never get anything done because they're just so careful about making sure everybody is fully heard. And so it just talked it through with the whole group watching, a lot of laughter, a lot of celebration, a lot of tears as people worked through it. And for me, that was the first time I'd ever actually done that deliberate a team build just using leadership grip. And it was fun. It was just a fun day, and I enjoyed it. The pastor wrote me a note a couple days later and said, just so you know, we will never again talk about leadership in our church apart from gifts language, because it's changed the way we think about how we function together as teams and as leadership in the church. So I felt really good about it. And I was celebrating that with the team, saying, this actually worked. I'd never done it quite like that before. And so I was asking, anybody else done that? But anyway, that was my experience. And it just reinforced for me that the whole principle of that Paul has been talking about over the years of moving from I to we is such a powerful principle that it's really about how we as a team function, it's not just me. I'm part of it, but I'm not the best in the whole. I'm only part of it. And anyway, that was that was my experience, and Larry asked me if I'd be willing to share that. And so if you have any questions or whatever, I'd be happy to hear them.
Yeah, Ken, I have a question. How long did you take to do this? What time frame?
About 3 hours. So this is
Okay.
a group of 23 people. I was the 24th person. So, but it took us about 3 hours to do that.
And
Good.
Ken, did you feel like you got participation from absolutely everybody in the group?
You know what? The fact of needing to move to their gifts or their team styles or whatever meant that nobody could take a back seat. So you got participation. And then it was almost like after the third or fourth person, there was this desire in every person to have those gifts affirmed by the group. And we often took, when a person was hesitant, I don't know, then we saw people say, no, do you remember when? Do you remember when? Yes, I remember when you did this. And you just saw this sense of affirmation and love just growing in that group. And now I would say this is a church, again, of 200, 220. They live in a small town. 15% of the population of that town attend this church. So these are people who know each other. They've been part of each other's lives, some of them for 30 and 40 years. So the disclaimer here is that I haven't done it with a group that don't know each other, that are from a large church and say, I've never seen people on this committee. It may look and feel very different. But in this case, it was a unique event.
Ken, did you have them put their leadership grip on a poster or anything?
No, I just had everybody holding their leadership grip. I printed it out and carried it with them. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't have time for that. It would have been fun. It would have been fun to take their triangle, have them draw it on a paper. And I realized afterward, yeah, that would have been a neat thing. If they would have come with that ahead of time,
Right.
if you'd have said, print out that page and enlarge it, it would have, I think, like I would have actually stuck it to their chest. Everybody wear it on your chest as you go around. There would have been this visual reminder of what is actually happening. But yeah, I think I'd add that part to it in the future. It's a great point.
Is there anything else you do differently, looking back on it?
You know what? I don't think so. I think I think I probably could have prepared the senior pastor more for this, because I didn't realize how it was going to, the impact it was going to have in the group. And so I think the next time I do something like this, I'll spend a little more time with the senior pastor, helping him understand how this is going to impact his group, or how this likely is, and what his task and follow-up is. How does he affirm those gifts? How does he take that gift language into more conversations? And I think so what's happened is, I guess I didn't see this. So he wrote me this note the next day, but then him and I have been in dialogue at several levels since then about how to apply this and what is it. And a lot of that I realized I could have done in advance, and it would have made him a better leader. And in fact, there would have been many times when I could have taken a back seat and allowed him to actually provide that leadership, to be the person in the center of the thing, calling on affirmation and that. I mean, I could have involved him much more in that. So, yeah, I would do that different. There's some things that I would, every time I do a conversation, a debrief, I think, I could have done that better, and here's how I'll do it different next time. But
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I appreciate that, and I think we overlook.
Yeah, please go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ken. I just think we overlook the power of the leadership grip by itself.
mm-hmm.
I know we're GRIP-Birkman, and that's powerful, but we can use the leadership grip just by itself. It's cheaper, and there's plenty of processing that can be done with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Les.
I think the grip could be the gateway drug for people who want to know more. I'm working with a pastor. We did the grip together, his, and I brought mine, and we were comparing them and talking. And I had actually brought along my Birkman report, and I showed him that, and he immediately wanted to do that. So we've done that. I have an appointment with their entire leadership team, current leaders, past leaders who might lead again, and people who are in the pipeline. And we're going to do something very similar to what you just described, Ken.
Good.
And my guess is he's going to want to run right ahead with the Birkman for everyone. But yeah, it was how we got him thinking about leadership in a different way, because he hadn't been thinking team play.
Yeah, that's a good one. We have a pastor in Ontario who's a transitional leader outside of our denomination. He's working with a Mennonite Brethren church, and who just decided to take. I think right now they're up to about 140 people through the leadership grip, just the leadership grip, and is doing these kind of small team briefs with every team in the church. And he reports back every once in a while that it's just having an incredible effect on how that church is functioning and how they're getting along and how they're thinking about how they provide spiritual leadership to the church. And so, yeah, I think, and I like your phrase, gateway drug. It's true. Even in that team, you've got the staff had gone through GRIP-Birkman. Now I have elders in that team saying, so you're saying that as good as this was, there's something that can take us even farther. Let's talk about that. And and that eventually their whole elders team will end up taking the Birkman side of this. And so, yeah, it'll be cool.
So, Ken, that brings up a question in my mind, because I've done this with the GRIP-Birkman, where you give them the base level, they see the value of it, and then they upgrade to a signature report. So if you start with your leadership grip, that's $10. And if they want to upgrade, do they pay the $49 for both the base level, and do they retake the leadership grip, or how does that work? Does that make sense?
Yeah. At this point, what we've been doing with the base level is we've been charging the $49. Although when they take signature, that we charge $80 instead of $90. So just because the $49, the base, there's no margin on that in terms of our relationship to Birkman.
Okay.
So we've been saying it's $49 for the base GRIP-Birkman. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
That's been a logistic issue. Simply, otherwise we have to start eating more and more, and we can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
We are still a not-for-profit organization for some reason.
So related to that, Ken, though, if they have done your leadership grip already, are they going to have to retake that? Are they going to have to enter it again? I mean, their email is already registered with that. Profile, right?
Right. We give them the option. So what happens is often we'll say, would you like to take it again? Because sometimes people's place in a team has shifted or whatever, and it'd be valuable to rethink that. If not, we can just simply order the Birkman by itself without having them to go through the leadership grip process.
So they can go straight just to the Birkman.
Yes, if they want. So we give them that option.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or similar experiences you'd like to share? Kim, one other thing that comes to my mind is I was talking to one leader who said she really never likes to do a gifts assessment outside of something that gives some insight to personality, because she feels that just looking at the gifts and how that affects us in our team styles and our bodybuilding roles doesn't give the full picture without also considering how our personality affects our actions, our behaviors. And I was just curious with you or anyone else in the group how you feel about that. I like the idea of doing just your leadership grip as a gateway, or from the other direction, as you talked about that other pastor, where we start with the leadership and we do say the full GRIP-Birkman with them, and then we come down, but for the main part of the membership of the church, at least have everybody do your leadership grip, even if they don't do the full GRIP-Birkman. But I'm just curious how you or any of the others feel about that, talking about team styles, bodybuilding roles, and how we work out of our gifts without bringing in something about personality to that?
Well, let me be the first to respond. I'm sure many of you have equal or better, much better responses. From my perspective, I would disagree with her in the sense that the scriptures don't tie spiritual gifts into personality. So Paul doesn't say if you're a meek person, then this is a gift you ought to have. And so I don't think we should be confined to that. The value of the grip of the Birkman part of this is the dotted diamond, is that you can see from where you are naturally, the gifts actually change your personality. They change the way you act. They change the way people see you. That's the incredible value of the balance between the grip and the Birkman. But I would disagree that the leadership grip by itself is somehow lacking. I don't think so. What happens is it's enhanced by the Birkman, and it's actually Birkman makes a lot of sense in why, when you're empowered by the Holy Spirit, you act differently. It makes sense, and you see that visually, and you draw the diamond, and that's powerful. I'm not sure that it's weak without that. Would be my response.
Good.
Anybody else disagree or agree or have other thoughts there?
I think I'd have to agree, Ken. I think just the grip itself has a lot of value. And the funny thing is, if you're working with a team that already knows each other pretty well, they will often surface issues of behavior and personality when we're talking about gifts. And they'll say, yes, they're a leader, but they lead alongside, or things like that. I've heard those kind of phrases used frequently when we've done this. Teams that know each other, that already have spent a fair amount of time with each other. They've already picked up things on personality.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with the value of looking at both, because we all know the value of the GRIP-Birkman. But I just think we've got to face reality with churches, their budgets, their time frame. And I was sitting with a seminary professor, church consultant. He took the GRIP-Birkman coach training from Paul and Grady several years ago, and it was just too much. This was before we made adjustments with the new training. He said, I knew it was valuable, it was just too much, and I didn't work through it. And so we've actually inoculated people from using the tool by giving them too much too quick, where they couldn't work through it. And I think I like the gateway less of, okay, we'll start with a $10, your leadership grip. If you want to, and then I think, just saying planting a seed at the end. Now, something that enhances this is looking at how God has shaped you from the womb in Psalms 139 with a unique personality. That will enhance your understanding. You plant the seed, they may go farther, and then if they want to get into the signature, you plant the seeds for self-assessment. There is another layer here of the components that can help you with self-awareness more. So I think we need to see it that way more, plant seeds and not to limit ourselves.
And I think, Kim, what you said, from early on, we talked about your leadership grip enhanced by Birkman. And it's not the other way around. It's not Birkman enhanced by your leadership grip. We start out with our spiritual gifts, even though our personality came to us first before we received spiritual gifts. And yet we're looking at the power of the Holy Spirit working through us. So many times when I have people on the Birkman mat doing the floor exercise, and they're talking about some of their behavior, and they'll start talking about behavior that is outside of the description of the quadrant that they are in right now. And it's not because they're just close to the line of another color. And right there, we have to say, wait a minute, what you're talking about is behavior outside of this. Where do you think that's coming from? And we get them started thinking, and it's, oh, I realize that's coming from my spiritual gift. That's what's changing this behavior. That's why I'm not acting the way a typical person would act with a red diamond, for example. Because the gift that is in me has me thinking more about people and being maybe a little less in my direct style of communication than I would ordinarily. So I think, right off the bat, we see that influence that's in them. But I think we get so enamored with the Birkman, to be real honest, that sometimes we forget that we are GRIP-Birkman, and the GRIP comes first.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ken, thanks for that testimony. We'll be asking some of the rest of you, as you're having new experiences and experiences that you think the rest of us might benefit from, we'd like to have more of you sharing those testimonies with us here so that we can all benefit from that. And I've got a nice long list of steps of how to go about getting this started with a group. I'm about to start working with a large church with a group there, and we're talking about using Leadership GRIP as the gateway also. This would be a great example for us.
I just put in the conversation.
Yeah, go ahead, Les.
I dropped a PDF in the chat. It's a picture of the floor chart that I use when I do a GRIP debrief.
Ooh. Tell us about that.
It's like the circle, Ken's circle, but I actually put out chairs, and you can see that there's a point that's the front of, I did it here with my leaders a couple times. They call it Les's bus, but that's the front of the bus, and got equipping gifts on one side, the supporting gifts on one side, and it's as they're coming back, you've got the up front, the mixed style, and the alongside of. And I took faith, wisdom, knowledge, and discernment, and I put them in the center because I don't often see them hanging loose. That's my gift. They're usually attached to something, maybe supercharging what it's attached to another gift. And then I have people go sit where their gift and their team style fits. And then while we're all seated, they can talk about what do they see, what don't they see, where are the gaps, why do we have all these guys standing up front because there wasn't enough chairs, what does that mean when you've got all those Indians and no chiefs, or too many chiefs and no Indians. So this is the visual that I use for them, and I give them chairs so they can sit there and chat as long as they need to process that.
Wow. So as you got them around in this group, what size group have you done this with, Les?
The first two times I've done it with groups that were 16 and 18, and I'll be using this with a group of 24 in about a month.
And what might you change about it if you were going to be with a smaller team?
I don't know if I would use this format if it was a much smaller team, because they might automatically just find the bus overwhelming. There's just way too many seats, and they would feel like, oh, well, we can't do it. We can't even fill the bus. So I tried to, I created this because I had so many people that were going to be there. I didn't know what to do with them. And so it worked well. So I'm going to continue to play with it. But I think the number of seats would be overwhelming. And if you got it down to, I don't know, maybe under 12, I don't think it would work. I mean, it might, but I just don't know. So that's been my experience with that.
Well, this is good because we need more exercises to help us with larger groups. Most of the things we've been doing has been with individuals or thinking about smaller teams. And so when you are doing in a larger setting with leadership grips and things like this could be very helpful.
And it was different. We did our pastoral assessment center back in January, and I was there to present GRIP and Birkman. And I did this floor exercise with the group that was there, but it really didn't work as this isn't a team, because the men we were assessing were all pastoral candidates. And so they were all crowded up into the front left side of the bus. And then we talked about the dynamic of what that meant for this particular group versus what it would mean when they took this back to their church. and how it would look differently. But it was just interesting. This is not a tool I would use when I had all of one kind of leaders either.
Yeah.
So
Les, could I ask a question?
go ahead.
Sure.
I think I understand this, but explain the arrows going in different directions. Like at the top of the bus, on the right side, you've got those two areas facing forward, and then the others going either way. Make sure I understand that.
Yeah. As you think about when I had people go sit, I had them think about how they thought their gifts were being used. Were they being used inward facing, all about us, or were they outward facing about the community around us? That's the sides of the bus. And then up front, there are certain people who felt that they were actually taking us someplace, and others felt that they were responsible for the team that they were taking.
That's the downward arrow that we see like with administration.
Yeah. And also there were some people, they were up front because they were small group leaders, and they were responsible for developing teams within the church. So they felt they were still a leader and were using their upfront style, but they were focused on the groups that were within the church. I do the same thing, only I put along the bottom some chairs along the back. It's like closing off the back of the bus. And some of those I have facing inward and outward as well. And then I take away the up front and alongside, and I put the team styles. And along the back of the bus is the team style, let's stay together. And it's interesting, that bench is often empty because there's nobody really looking off the back of the bus to make sure no one fell off. And that's a weakness I find that a lot of churches have. We want to get everybody going with us, but if somebody somehow slips off or goes out the back door, we're just not watching for them. And at one of the leadership team meetings where I did this, a woman who was sitting up along the right side of the bus, she had support gifts. She stood up and walked back and sat down. And I said, "What are you doing, Kelly?" And she said, "Well, this is not my natural wiring, but I am willing to sit here until you can find the person who belongs here." And I mean, there were people crying in the circle. I mean, they were just overwhelmed that she would do that. But again, it was looking at, this is who we are, this is what we don't have. I'm willing to do that until we find that person. That was just so powerful.
So Les, do you actually put gifts on each chair? Like, do you list gifts?
No, I kind of, I tell them up front, I list off what they are, and I kind of walk around the bus and I talk about it, and I just let them go, because some of them sitting in the wrong place at the wrong time is often a learning experience. And I didn't want to preclude that somebody couldn't go where they thought they belonged and then have an aha moment realizing, well, maybe this is why I'm so exhausted all the time, because I'm doing something I'm not wired for. I wanted them to discover that. I didn't want to have to tell them that. And they did.
Interesting. Do you have a write-up of your instructions for this, Les?
Yeah, it's in pretty bad shape. I'm actually working on it right now because I had promised Paul that I was going to send it to him, and I still haven't done it.
Yeah. And I like the concept, though, of, where are you on the bus? Everybody get on the bus, and what's your place here? And if you, like Ken, you might have been talking about, if you get a group where you got everybody that's, feels like they're the leader, if everybody's crowded up in the front of the bus, you can ask the question of what's that going to be like. Or if you had the opposite sometimes, everybody's crowded in the very back of the bus, what's going to happen here? Yeah. There can be some real good, the purpose of all of this is to get dialogue started. And as we get dialogue started among those people, and they start discovering who they are in the body and what their role is in the body, we've met our purpose. If we can get that started, for them to then act on that and say, so how then should we act as a team based on what we've learned about who we are? That's great. Any other comments or questions for Les about that? Well, not wanting the silence to go too long, I do have one other thing that I want to share with you real quickly, and that is about our Here's What I Think of You form. I would run a quick poll. I'm not going to do that. But as I anecdotally have talked to a lot of people around, new coaches particularly don't seem to be very familiar with the form, Here's What I Think of You. It's a worksheet that we have had for a very long time. I'm going to share with you that one real quick. Hope you can see this now. It's in our coach training manual. In fact, you see page 73 there in the appendix. This is a form that is designed to give a little bit of 360-degree type feedback on your spiritual gifts. And we can use this to share with people, preferably people who know you well. It's not a very difficult form to use. They can just take the printed form, they can circle it, get it back to you, and then on the next page, you have an opportunity to do a tally score according to how people have listed them. In the worksheet that you give to your raters, you just see these lists of descriptive words or short phrases that they can say, what are these words that really describe this person? And then they correspond to a specific gift that we can see according to the descriptors. And as we, for example, you can see evangelist, the descriptions of soul winner, new Christian, strong conviction go with evangelist. It is not a very extremely scientific type of an assessment, but it gives you additional insight. And I'm just curious now, how many of you have actually been using the Here's What I Think of You worksheet, either in your specific team builds, or you've had some experience that you'd like to share about how that has been used?
Every time and with every person.
All right, Gail, you are a faithful user of it.
I am. I'm just convinced that there are just incredible insights that come out of using that form. That when you get in conversation with someone and you're unpacking the results, they will talk about how surprised they are. They've never gotten that kind of feedback before from their friends or their peers, and it's invaluable.
Now, Gail, how do you introduce the form to them, and when do you introduce it to them?
Before I even meet with them the first time, I get them started. I typically work with people who are in the application process for One Mission Society. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I get the go-ahead from someone, I email them with the form and a score sheet attached and tell them this is how you can get started in the process. And I tell them that they need to send it to at least 10 people who know them well, including their spouse. And it's amazing how many people nowadays are coming back with 10 people having reported their results. And then we'll unpack that once they have finished the GRIP. Then we'll sit down and have a conversation around that, both the Here's What I Think of You results and their spiritual gifts results.
And I'm curious, Gail, how often do you have people that their raters see them differently than they saw themselves?
A few times there'll be something that it'll often manifest itself as a surprise. I can remember in the past working with a gal that all of her feedback, everybody was saying leadership, leadership, leadership. And yet in her results, there was nothing of leadership. And I asked her about that. And she just didn't even want to go there. She was like, well, yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. But I said, but there's an awful lot of people that have said they see leadership in you. They've seen those qualities, and that's what they see you doing. And yet she would not, I could not convince her to even talk about it. It was interesting.
Was there, I guess the only way I can put it, was there a doctrinal conflict for her in terms of women being in leadership?
I remember Dean was in the room with me, and he thought there perhaps was and could even have been the particular field where she was serving in ministry, that there was a very definite bias against women in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And so she just didn't want to.
Because we often see that with women, particularly who might come up with descriptions that result in a pastoring gift.
Oh, okay.
You have to remind them, hey, this is talking about the act of shepherding, of pastoring people. It is not talking about the office of pastor in a local church.
Yeah, I get that too. that people get confused on that. They think, they'll say to me, well, but I'm not a pastor, I don't preach. And I'll say, well, that's really not exactly what it's talking about.
Right.
And I point them to the descriptors, and we talk about that.
Larry, I think this, like Gail's illustrating, I think this is a essential step that we need to make sure that we're using well, because if we all remind ourselves of the 4 passes of sober estimation or honest evaluation, it's make sure you understand the context of what the gift says or what the gift is describing. Then think about content. I'm sorry, is the first one. Context. Have you ever experienced that before? Particularly the liabilities or the shadow side, as Ken was talking about. They'll often see their gifts and their liabilities. And then the third step is community. And so what does your community say? And so this is just a wonderful way and an easy way for them to listen to their community of what their observation is about their gifts. So I think it goes hand in hand with the evaluation process and the processing of who they are and how God has shaped them.
Wow.
There's something very powerful about that affirmation. We can't not do that. I mean, Gal, I appreciated you said everyone every time. I didn't know we didn't do this. I mean, I was introduced to GRIP in the book, and this was in the back of the book. It was part of the homework assignment, when you did the assessment. So I've just always done it. I didn't know better.
Good. Let's keep infecting the rest of the people and keep reminding them. It has always been here, and it has always been emphasized and taught, but I'm just discovering that there are a number of people that are not using it.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, every now and then I have somebody that says they never got the email from me, and they didn't, and consequently they never sent the form out. They have no input from other people, and whenever I go over the results, they're all over the place. I mean, it's really not clear at all where their gifts are. Nothing lines up, and so then I say, well, how about sending out that form? I'll send it to you again, and we get that, and then it seems like we go back to that, and then we can really use what other people are saying and see if there's any results that they have that could perhaps mirror that. And which I love the online version. We have gone from using the DME workbook to the online version now. It's so great to be able to go back into their score pages and see how, what the scores were, see what were the highest scores and lowest scores, and even why they picked, having a conversation around why did you seem to pick these particular gifts. Tell me a little bit about that and what you've experienced. It's just great to be able to have that kind of access, which we had when they did the workbook, because we could always sit down with somebody in the workbook and see.
Yeah, that's the disadvantage, I guess, right now with the online version. On our wish list, we do have the "Here's What I Think of You" form to be automated as part of the assessment again.
Mm-hmm.
As we went to our online version, somehow that dropped out, and it's up to the coach now to make sure that the individual gets that form. There's no other way for them to get it if the coach doesn't give it to them.
Right.
So, that's an unfortunate downside to what our online version is right now. But as I say, it is on our wish list to get it back automated in such a way that you would just put in the emails of the people you want it to go to, and it would automatically go out to them, and then it would come back to you for your compilation.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in comparing the ones that you've attached here. I think it was Jay attached that for everybody to look at, because I saw a few words, a few descriptors that I'm pretty sure are not in the forms that I'm using, and so I probably need to update the forms I've been using. These I got from Bob Rummel, years ago. He just
Yeah,
actually sent them to me.
Oh, yeah. In fact, well, it has changed considerably then. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the order of
And
them
it doesn't
also.
have supporting releaser.
Mhm.
Yeah, it didn't
in
have.
other versions.
Yeah, we didn't have supporting
Didn't
releaser.
have supporting releaser, and the order of them is now lining up also, so it's easier to score because
Okay.
the worksheet and the score sheet line up better now.
Good. Okay.
But yeah, if you're using an old form, by the way, for those that are looking, that are seeing this on the recorded version, coaches, you can go to the resource page on the GRIP-Birkman website, and you can download the most recent current edition of the coach training manual, and that's where you'll find this in the appendix of that. So you can then just pull out those pages as a PDF and send them along.
And Larry, they're also individual on the coaching resource page under coaching helps.
Under coaching helps, they are there.
Yeah, and they're PDF files. And yeah, make sure that you're using the new ones because there's still some old ones that are floating around. And the new ones are attached to this and the chat here. And then they're also online in those two places.
Yeah, so Gail, you can download that right now. But both
Okay.
the worksheet and the form, the score sheet are separate PDFs that Jay's included for us in the chat there.
Yeah, already done.
Good. Wayne Harris, did I see that you wanted to comment?
Well, I'm looking at. I don't see the downloads in the chat.
You may have to scroll up in the group chat.
Hmm.
I'm seeing.
Zoom
Study
group
one.
chat. I don't see anything.
Huh.
Are you seeing the chat window at all to the right hand side?
I've opened the Zoom group chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
Zoom group chat. It ought to be there, and it's from J.R. Jarbo to everyone. Jay, maybe you could just resend it to Wayne specifically.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thanks. Anyone else have any other comments about the Here's What I Think of You? Any unique ways you've used it or special hints about how to get it out to people?
Well, I send it, what Gal has been doing, I send it to them. I love the conversation that takes place when you're talking about how other people see you versus what the assessment report offers. And I also like to tie it with a conversation that sometimes needs to take place because they now have the opportunity with the new GRIP to change the gifts around, and that'll be down there. And to talk about why they did that versus what the report scored versus what other people are seeing. And one of the things that I'm recognizing is that often people will report on the Here's What I Think of You, their initial contact with that person. They met me in a time of need. They're probably going to score mercy gifts higher because that's where they met them, regardless what they see other times.
Yeah.
And that's been an observation. And I've watched people change scores or the order of their gifts to match what they prefer, not necessarily what's actually going on. And so that's an amazing conversation. And then you start the conversation, you kind of move back and say, okay, talk to me about that, and just kind of let them process it and hear their own voice admitting, well, this is what I prefer, and I have no clue why Bob said that about me. And maybe he needs to go talk to Bob. And that's another conversation that can go places. That's how I've been using it.
I see.
Trying to just help them see themselves differently.
Yeah, there you go. And in fact, that is one of the main reasons that we allowed them to change the order of their gifts or their team styles, because after they would get feedback from their raters, that might influence to say, oh, I see this now myself in a way that I did not see them. Or even after you've had a coaching session with them, they could go back in and could change it as they get more insight. So that's a good point. Anyone else have any other comments or questions or something new you'd like to share with the group? Well, your silence says that we are drawing close to the top of the hour. I don't know about you guys, but I have been stimulated by the discussion today. And every time we get together, I get some new points and I add them somewhere back in my quiver as an arrow that I can shoot later on. So I hope that you do too. Just want to remind you all, by the way, that we have a date for our 2018 GRIP-Birkman celebration. We're going to be meeting at the end of October. Help me out, Jay and Ken. I believe it's we're going to start on Tuesday, the 23rd of October, according to my calendar.
Yes.
3-day event, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of October in the Dallas area. Jay, you want to tell us just real quickly, we're going to be in your backyard.
Yeah, as you know, Dallas-Fort Worth, I live in Fort Worth. We'll be meeting the Dallas side. It's about 35 to 45 minutes from DFW Airport, Highland Oaks Church of Christ. It's actually in the Garland area on it'd be the southeast side of Dallas area. And if you know Dallas-Fort Worth, there's a very different feel between Dallas and Fort Worth. And people who live in either prefer their feel. Dallas is a little bit more business-like. Fort Worth is a little bit more Texas country. But we'll be on the Dallas side, and more information will be getting out. So it's closer to flying to Love Field, actually, maybe about 10, 15 minutes. It depends on the traffic. But that's where we'll be in October.
So save the date. And we're going to have a great celebration. We're already seeing some really neat things that are being planned for it. And we're hoping to see a large group of GRIP-Birkman coaches coming together for that time. There'll be a little bit of training, a lot of fellowship, and a lot of affirmation. This is a great time for us to be building community and putting into practice some of the things that we talk about, that we are about as GRIP-Birkman. So with that, folks, we come to the close of another Coaches Cafe. Thanks for joining us. I hope this has been helpful to you, and we encourage you to just keep doing everything you can as a coach to help churches and groups grow in their unity as we're building more unity in the body of Christ so more people will know Jesus. Lord bless you all. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.